Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Alessandro and I'm an Italian living in the beautiful city of Warsaw in Poland. On this channel I mostly talk about personal finance for European investors, but I also share more personal things like how I invest my money and of course how much I spend in a month. But honestly, telling how much you spend in a month only makes sense if you put it into the context of the city where you live. So in this video I want to talk a bit more about the cost of living here in Warsaw and to show you the main spending categories that have the biggest impact on my monthly budget. Warsaw is not a very expensive city, especially if you compare it to other European capitals like Berlin, Paris or Vienna. But I have to say that the cost of living here has increased a lot in the last years. Warsaw is growing fast. There are more and more rich people, the average salaries are higher, and all of this is creating a strong inflation. Regarding my specific situation, I want to start with a few clarifications. The first one is that I live alone. The second one is that I own the apartment where I live. I bought a small studio apartment here in Warsaw 3 years ago, not far from the city center, so I don't have to pay rent. I only pay for the bills and the maintenance fees. The third thing is that I live, or at least I try to live a pretty simple life. I try to spend much less than what I earn every month, and I invest the difference. I consider myself a minimalist in many aspects of my life, but of course I still spend money on my hobbies, on some trips, and a few small luxuries that are important for me, like taking a taxi when I want, since I don't have a car, or going to a restaurant sometimes, or getting my groceries delivered at home. So yeah, I live a quite normal life. Here in Poland the official currency is the zloty, but I will convert all the numbers into euros to make everything easier. And to give you a more interesting reference, I didn't look at only 1 month of expenses, I looked at 6 months, the second half of 2025, so we can see together my average spendings. We will analyze each category of my expenses and then we will see the total. Let's start with the biggest category, which in my case is groceries. In 6 months I spent a total of 1,707 euros, which is about 284 euros per month, or 22% of my total expenses. I order my groceries online from a website called Frisco. For me, the convenience of having everything delivered to my home is something I don't want to give up. I could probably save some money if I bought food in discount supermarkets like Biedronka or Lidl, but yeah, this is one of those small luxuries I don't want to sacrifice. The second biggest spending category is related to my home. This includes electricity, internet, other bills, building fees, and very occasionally some things that I need to buy for the apartment. For example, last month I had to buy a new dishwasher, which costed me around 400 euros, and this is included of course in this category. So in the last 6 months I spent a total of 1,451 euros for my apartment, which is about 241 euros per month, another 19% of my total expenses. The apartment I live in is completely mine, I don't have a mortgage to pay, and no rent either. But if I had to pay a rent for an apartment like this, a studio in the city center, I would probably spend around 700 euros more per month. From what I see, it's hard to stay under that number in Warsaw, and if you want a 1-bedroom apartment in the city center, prices start at 1,000 euros per month, plus bills. The third spending category for me is transport. This includes public transport tickets, taxis, and even plane tickets. For public transport, I pay a subscription that gives me access to the metro, buses, trams, and city trains. It costs 250 zloty every 3 months, which is about 20 euros per month. Really cheap. I take taxis a few times a week, especially when I go home at night after going out, or when I'm in a hurry. I use the Uber and Bolt apps, and usually a 10-minute ride costs around, I would say, 5-6 euros. As for plane tickets, I don't travel that much. Most of the times I just fly back to Italy to visit my family. But in general I would say I take a plane about once every 3 months, something like that. And I use always low-cost airlines. In the last 6 months I spent a total of 1,152 euros on transport, which is about 192 euros per month. at 15% of my total expenses. Next, we have the restaurants category. For me, this includes restaurants, but also fast food and food delivery at home. Basically anything related to food that is not part of groceries. In the last 6 months I spent 772 euros on this, which is about 128 euros per month, or 10% of my total expenses. I would say the prices for a meal at a cheap restaurant or fast food in Warsaw is around 10 euros, and more than double for a mid-range restaurant. So it's not particularly expensive, but compared to a few years ago, eating out has become more costly, and there are more and more high-end restaurants in the city where you can spend much more than what I said. The next category is health. This includes medicines, private doctor visits, the dentist, and all things like that. The total spending is 626 euros, which is about 104 euros per month, or 8% of the total. Then we have gifts. Recently I had to buy some gifts for Christmas, so this of course had an impact on this category. Otherwise the number would have been much smaller. Anyway, I spent 373 euros for gifts in the last 6 months, which is 62 euros per month, 5% of the total. Next we have nightlife. This includes entry to clubs, drinks, and other evening activities. Just to give you an idea, a beer in a normal bar here in Warsaw can cost around 5 euros, and a drink might be around 8 euros. So I spent a total of 286 euros for the nightlife, which is around 47 euros per month, or 4% of the total. Next we have dancing. I dance bachata and salsa. This is my hobby, so I pay for classes, parties, and sometimes festivals. And I spent 216 euros in 6 months, which is 36 euros per month, 3% of the total. Then we have hotels with 207 euros, 34 euros per month on average. Clothing. I try not to spend much on clothes, and I'm quite happy to see that this category is only 3% of my total expenses, with a total of 205 euros and an average of 34 euros per month. Next we have the gym membership and some other random costs related to working out, with 189 euros total, 32 euros per month. And in fact a gym membership here in Warsaw can cost around 30-40 euros per month. Let's move on with personal care, 178 euros, 30 euros per month on average. Subscriptions like Netflix, Spotify, and a few others. I try not to keep active subscriptions I don't use, but anyway the total for this category is 134 euros, 22 euros per month on average. And finally there are other leisure activities, bars, and electronics. That's it. The total in the last 6 months is 7,809 euros, which is about 1,300 euros per month. Here you can see a pie chart showing the contribution of each spending category to the total. I believe it's possible to spend even less than this in Warsaw, for example living with someone else and sharing costs, or giving up some things. I'm sure most students, for example, spend much less than me every month. But I also see many people who spend much more than me in Warsaw. And indeed, if I had to pay a rent or a mortgage, I would spend a monthly amount which is much closer to 2,000 euros than to 1,000. Now I'd like to hear what you think about the cost of living in Warsaw. If you live here or have visited the city, I'd love to hear your opinion or any thoughts about this video. Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you don't want to miss my next updates, and I'll see you soon. Bye!